All right, this other piece is something we've been tracking closely and is extremely scary and disturbing and has vast consequences. So let's go ahead and put this next one up on the screen. So global food prices hit their highest recorded levels ever last month. Of course, this is driven up significantly by the war. Let me just read you a little bit of this article. They say the Food and Agriculture Organization announced on Friday that its food price index, which tracks monthly changes in the international prices of a basket of commonly traded food commodities, averaged 159.3 points in March. That's up 12.6% just from February. So it jumped up almost 13% in just 1 month. February had already seen the highest level since the organization began tracking in 1990. And get this, it's more than a third higher than it was just a year ago. So this basket of sort of common food commodities, I'm sure things like wheat, for example, has spiked by a third. Prices have gone up in just 1 year. The FAO went on to say that the war spread shocks through markets for staple grains and vegetable oils. Of course, guys, this is something we've been tracking here. Russia and Ukraine collectively accounted for about 30% of global wheat exports and 20% of maize exports over the last 3 years. And then you add on top of that, as if that wasn't all bad enough, we've had some impacts both here and around the world in terms of climate change that has also made the harvest less than what it should be. China said this was like their worst harvest on record, which also puts stress on the food system. You know, countries in that region really depend on Ukraine in particular and on Russia, both for wheat and for maize and some other, and sunflower oil and some other critical sort of staples there, and also for some of the components that go into fertilizer, which means that you're not just talking about a now problem in terms of food prices and poor countries in particular being unable to, people being unable to afford to feed themselves and their children. You're also talking about significant lagging effects where the next harvest is also going to be impacted because farmers can't get the fertilizer that they need in order to grow crops. I don't have to tell you that, you would be hard-pressed to find a better indicator of when and where and how revolutions start than the price of wheat and the price of bread. This is a multi-thousands of years historical trend. And of course, it's just going to cause mass suffering. I do want to be clear, there is enough wheat, there is enough food to feed the world, but the price is the issue. It's going to be out of reach for millions and millions and millions of people.
Yeah, I think that the real problem here is that if you look throughout history, and this is actually what I was thinking, part of the reason that the Tsars and the Russians and the Soviet Union were always so obsessed with controlling Ukraine is it was known as the breadbasket of Europe. It's the largest country in all of continental Europe. They have very fertile soil, and they have for years produced an immense amount of the world's wheat. Now, since they become an independent country, they export a ton of wheat to the rest of the world. As you're pointing to with India, one of the reasons that this has always been so concerning, and almost immediately they were pointing to on the show, was, yeah, food inflation here is bad. It's way worse in developing countries, Africa and in India and elsewhere, where they are, number one, already more food insecure, to use a politically correct term, but also much more dependent on imports and have much more fluctuating commodity food markets. So there's a lot of different disruptions that can happen within the food markets that make life there very difficult. Now, we're going to get to this in Shanghai, but people should consider that not everybody lives the way that you and I live, or that Americans live. A lot of people here eat frozen food. Now, I don't think frozen food is good for you, but in terms of storage and all of that, it's very convenient. Part of the reason why, and we'll talk about this more in Shanghai, that Shanghai is such a complete disaster is because Chinese mostly eat fresh food. So they need food from the markets every 2 or 3 days. That's a massive logistical challenge for the government. Same in terms of the flour and other things. This is more of an Indian problem, but people there don't think of grocery store shopping in the way that a lot of people here in the West do.
They're not going to Costco, loading up the SUV.
For once a week.
For 3 months of frozen pizzas or whatever.
And so food inflation hits harder on the wallet, and also the supply chain disruption has a much more immediate effect on the food systems in third world countries than it does in the first world, and specifically the West and the United States, just because of the difference in our food patterns. So this is a disaster. It really is. And as you said, I mean, what's the number one constant throughout all of civilization? No food, no bread? there's a problem. You can look at the Mayans, you can look at the Sumerians, like
French Revolution.
French Revolution. Yeah. It's like, I don't even have to go that far back.
Arab
like
Spring.
a couple hundred years within the last 2 decades. These are big problems that have long-standing 40th, 50th order effects on society.
And of course, you already have some countries where there was already mass famine. I mean, Afghanistan, thanks to our government's policies. Yemen, also partly thanks to our government policies. So already before this war, you had a dire situation with regards to wheat and overall food prices, with the UN agency responsible for sort of distributing aid saying that they were more stretched before the war than they had ever been in history. So with these kind of price spikes, 13% in a single month, it really spells a lot of heartache, death, pain, and disaster, and something we're definitely going to keep our eye on.
Hey guys, we're going to be totally upfront with you. This is the most perilous time that we have ever operated in.
It is so difficult just to try to sort through the news, but even more importantly, to bring you accurate information as this wave of lockdown and censorship spreads across the nation.
Yeah, look, if you can become a premium subscriber today at breakingpoints.com, you're going to help us build out a vibrant, independent media ecosystem which is free of mainstream pressure. We can't tell you how important that is at a time like this.
Yep, that's right. Go to breakingpoints.com to subscribe. We love you guys and we appreciate you so much.